And welcome back to another episode of Civil Discord, your weekly dose of radical curiosity. I am the notorious BLG, out here in the People's Republic of Texas, Maurice Jones, the lovely great state that has a gubernatorial election coming up here pretty soon. And one of our guys we'll probably talk about here later and how much of an idiot he is. But yes, we're out here having a blast out here in the great state of Texas. It's been hot. It's been great. My grass is taking. So I am now officially a homeowner. I care more about my grass than I do anything else in this world. So, and with me again, more often than I am is the great supreme overlord of liberty, the one who knows almost everything and is a very much the smartest person on the call, always the smartest person in the room, even though she hates to admit it, is Amanda out there in the People's Republic of California. Amanda, how's it going?
I'm good. I hate to admit it because your background is actually like our disinformation governance officer. I feel like you're the insignia in your background is in fact the most intelligent person in this podcast. It's really both of our spirits are in that insignia.
For sure.
Clearly, I provided the body type for the drawing. But at any rate, I'm doing well. The summer has started. And we've kicked it off.
Yeah, summer started for both of us.
Yes.
I'm out of school because I'm no longer teaching. You're out of school. Your quarter is over or whatnot. So summer is officially kicking off for those of us who are in the education realm, I should say. But yeah, we took a week off or whatnot, which is fine, completely fine. There were a lot of things that had happened over the past couple of weeks and a lot of things that we are going to touch on, mainly because a lot of them are centered around some sort of firearms and things of that nature. But that being said, if you were sleeping under a rock, as most of us typically do not do if we're on social media, you know, the Amber Heard and the Johnny Depp trial was going. And one group had I would say some competent lawyers, and the other one, I think their lawyers were maybe she ordered them her Wish or Wish.com or something. I don't know where she got these lawyers from. But
competent lawyer. I want to say like Benjamin Rottenborn acquitted himself all right. One of Amber Heard's counsel, but he wasn't her lead counsel.
Right.
And yeah, I feel like if we'd stuck with his argument and his theory of the case, this would have gone much differently. But
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, the Johnny Depp trial has come to a sad end. I say sad because I don't get to watch the circus anymore. That's why I say sad. No, it has actually come to a very good end. Depending on how you look at it. Hopefully 99.9% of the people who look at it say that this was a good end for us. But Johnny Depp won on all three accounts. I do believe Amber Heard won on one account.
She won on one of her claims, and it's really interesting to I feel like it's a really interesting reason for which she won and how that all worked. I mean, it was a wild case because you had two parties that were, at least in some cases, both found liable for statements that they did not make directly. Right. And that in Heard's case, she didn't even make it by mentioning Johnny Depp. So defamation by implication. But I feel like that, you know, that it's a really cool in the weeds kind of reasoning for why Heard did in fact win on a particular defamation claim. It's not inconsistent. I will say that the claim on which she won, the jury found that Depp, through his attorney, Adam Waldman, previous attorney, had defamed her. That was in regard to a specific incident that the jury found there was not evidence to conclude that that incident occurred the way Waldman said it occurred.
Right.
The jury did, however, find that in terms of the general account of abuse, there was not sufficient evidence that Depp had abused Heard. And in fact, the preponderance of evidence suggested that he did not abuse her in the ways that she insinuated, implied in the op-ed. So it's not an inconsistent verdict. I feel like the jury instructions were worded so as to lead them to conclude the bit about defamation from Adam Waldman. But that's a little bit in the weeds, and I might geek out about it in an article or something. maybe not the topic for a podcast lecture, but it is very interesting. It's an interesting verdict itself.
For sure. So I think Johnny ended up winning. What was it like? Is it 8 million, 8.6 million or something around that?
It will come to $8,350,000.
Okay.
The reason for that is that Virginia has a statutory cap on punitive damages. So initially the jury had said 10 million in compensatory damages, 5 million in punitive damages. That 5 million gets wiped away because there's that that statutory cap. So then that's 10.35, and then that gets taken down because Heard was awarded 2 million in compensatory damages only, the equivalent of her Aquaman salary. I think that's how they came to that number. I'm not sure about how they came to the 15, but it's a jury.
I'm like, hey, it is what it is. So I will say this, that I am happy for Johnny on this. I am happy that other people were able to see exactly what he dealt with and how it's very rare to say that somebody is males have been victims of some sort of abuse or things of that nature, and it's always, I mean, even that whole Me Too movement, believe all women unless they were manhandled by Joe Biden. But it's literally believe all women until they are proven innocent. So everybody is deemed guilty until proven innocent, which is of course not how things are in our judicial system, or not how things should be. I'm not gonna say that's not how things are. It's not how things should be in our judicial system. So I will say I'm happy for him. He won some money. He was able to recoup a little bit of what he lost. I mean, because he lost way more than that as far as money is concerned. Like, if we're being real, I mean, if we're talking about the whole Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, like him no longer being on that is a huge chunk of change. I will say this though, I have not seen a whole lot of Johnny Depp commercials. For the longest time, I didn't see any. Like, I used to see a lot, and then they just stopped. And I was just like, oh. And then today, I'm flipping through the channels, and I'm watching. I was like, oh, it's a Johnny Depp commercial. It was a Dior commercial for fragrance. I was like, oh, look at him. Hey, he's back out there. I tried to see if his finger was still missing, but I'm pretty sure it was a previously ran commercial that they just that they just put back on. So
one's probably cleaned up now. I mean, that was way back when he got his finger his finger cut off.
For sure.
So, yeah. You know, so there are Elaine Bredehoft, who is Amber Heard's lead attorney, has been making the rounds saying that she intends to appeal. I do not think that an appeal is likely to be granted, partly because, you know, she's kind of switching her story. She says, well, you know, we won in the UK and the jury wasn't allowed to hear that we won in the UK. So a couple things. They didn't win in the UK. A lot of people do know this, but Amber Heard was not a party in the UK. She was a witness. And the question at issue was also not about whether Johnny Depp abused Amber Heard. The question at issue was whether The Sun, which is a British tabloid, had the reasonable expectation that their source, in this case Amber Heard, was telling the truth about abuse claims. And in that case, the judge relied heavily on the fact that Johnny Depp was a drug user, which made him less credible, and that Amber Heard had donated her divorce settlement, which made her more credible. We've since learned that Amber Heard also used drugs. Maurice is doing his little bunny rabbit scare quote there. She also pledged, Maurice, she pledged the $7 million
there it is.
Had not donated. And she uses pledged and donate synonymously. I didn't know that was a thing in the English language.
I didn't either. I literally did not.
Same thing, but I'm a pledge a lot of things to a lot of people now. I mean, that's great. That's great news for me. That is
exactly.
Really great.
We're going to get a
my
lot of people pledging $1 million
dissertation.
to us.
I'm a pledge some articles, GML,
Exactly.
pledge my student loans. That's all.
Right.
That's fantastic. I'll pledge my taxes to IRS next year. I don't think that. I don't think the appeal is likely to be granted.
For sure.
And the other interesting thing is that Bretta Hoft is saying that the jury was influenced by the internet. She's accusing the jury of breaking their, admonition to stay offline. The thing was that if the jury had been online, I actually don't think they would have returned the verdict in favor of Amber Heard that they did, because if you'd been online, you would have known that there were in fact 2 calls placed to the LAPD the night that Adam Waldman was talking about. What Adam Waldman said was that, Amber and her friends set Johnny Depp up. They placed 1 call to the LAPD, and then the police came and found nothing. And so then they roughed the place up, spilled some wine, called the police again, and the police came back. But the jury only heard evidence of 1 phone call being made. So you'd conclude, okay, well, there's only 1 phone call that's made, so I don't think that's true. But the internet knew that there were 2 911 calls that were made. So if the jury had been looking at the internet, I actually don't think they would have found in favor of Amber on any of the counts.
For sure.
Which is really interesting. But the real victim in all of this, Maurice, is Taylor Lorenz. I don't know if you know this.
Poor Taylor.
She suffered the journalistic equivalent of being dragged through broken glass by writing a misleading story that made false claims about content creators, violated some journalistic ethics in failing to adequately report out those claims, had her editor issue a stealth correction in an attempt to cover for her, had that correction caught, the correction was still wrong, had another correction issue, and then blamed the editor for the miscommunication during Pride Month. So it's a dark day for women who are bad at pretending to cry. And what happened was there was a tug of war in terms of the media coverage on this trial. And this is what I find so interesting. It's tug of war between trad media and chad media, I guess. That's our title. Where trad media, traditional media outlets, were covering this the way that they always did. They had reporters that were not really, in some cases, were following the trial, but not glued to it. Obviously, they have other jobs. It's understandable. They've got other stories. We're reading a lot of copy, and they were showing clips of the most sensationalist elements of the trial. This is a method they've been taught works. But there's another method now that we have that we didn't have before, which is that you have the YouTubers, the actual renaissance of expertise, ladies and gentlemen. We had YouTube lawyers, we had YouTube experts that were streaming not just the arguments, not just the witnesses, you're streaming arguments about jury instructions. You had millions of people watching that, and the lawyers were breaking this down, saying, here's what's interesting about this, here's what's interesting about that. A lot of them pretty impartial. There was a bias, but there was, they were talking about what both sides were doing right, what both sides were doing wrong. And people were really into that. So then the narrative had to shift in trad media to, oh no, these TikTokers who are just sensationalizing the trial and don't know anything about it, and there are no experts. We don't have any experts. We got the expert. The experts are here. See, here's an expert. Here's an expert. He hasn't watched the trial, but he's definitely an expert. And just this hyperventilating. And this is a really, not even a canary in a coal mine, but it's a sign that people, there is a market for personality and expertise and reporting that respects viewers. That's the huge distinction that I see between trad and chad media. So I'm really excited, but it is very irritating to see the way that traditional media has responded to this renaissance of expertise.
For sure. And there was actually one girl who's on TikTok. She popped up on my For You page as I was scrolling one time, but she had mentioned about how the cop was following her out and then turned around and picked up the water bottle because there was a big discussion about what's in the water bottle and why Amber Heard was hiding the water bottle
Right.
and all this, which was, I mean, it's all speculation. Let's
Amber
be real.
Heard, had a water bottle on the stand, and then she threw it
Exactly.
in the trash can, and then there was a clip
Right.
of a cop running and grabbing that water bottle.
Right. And somebody was like, "Oh my gosh, what is that? What is that?" Like, and it's crazy because Court TV actually picked up this specific TikTok and was like, okay, like it was actually going back for some other evidence that was out. It wasn't necessarily the water bottle that was in the trash can and this, that, and this, that, and the third. But it's interesting to see how you have your, as you deemed it, trad. So you have your traditional media outlets, your court TVs who sit there and they talk about things. They're not really like diving into it, but there are people who report on it more often than other media outlets. But they still aren't the experts of the experts who have been who are necessarily eyes glued to this the whole time. And they are now kind of, I guess you would say, almost blurring the lines of those media outlets, which I think is a good thing for them to be able to say, like, okay, for them to adapt and say, like, okay, here's how people truly respond to media. Here's how technology is advancing. Here we can now reach the masses by doing TikTok lives or by doing YouTube lives and not having everybody tune into Court TV. Like, nobody wants to watch Court TV. Let's be real. Like, nobody watches. Most people don't even realize Court TV is an actual TV channel. Like,
I used to watch it with my dad. I used to watch Forensic Files.
Well, see, things like that for sure. Like, because there have been trials that I've watched on Court TV. There was one about some crazy girl. I can't remember her name. This was probably back in 2013 or so. Was it Casey Anthony? Yes,
there was a
Casey Anthony trial. So it's like they were discussing all of that, but to see them kind of start to blur those lines of, okay, is this traditional media reporting, or are we going to use the technology or use things that people actually respond to in order for us to reach said masses that we need to? And granted, this is a I mean, it's Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. Like this, it's a big deal in the sense of like, okay, we people make things up and things of that nature, which is why I think this was under the scope of so many people. I mean, I heard people with some crazy outlandish takes talking about we can't let Johnny Depp win this trial because then it puts the power back in the hands of men and so forth. I'm just like, okay, like that is so sick. But
it's not how our
anyway,
system works. Yeah, you're not judged by your ethnicity. You're not judged by your gender. You're not judged by any identity group. You're judged for not even for who you are. You're judged for what you did, or what you're alleged to have done.
Exactly.
That is the only thing that matters.
So and to hear those takes, I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrendous. But to be able to offset that with people who actually know. I mean, you referenced there earlier, TikTok lawyers. There are people who were literally streaming the case live and making comments on what just happened live, like actual lawyers.
I was watching them. I was watching them. They were great.
Yes, they're great. And like you said, they weren't necessarily partial to one side or the other. They had some biases or whatnot, but I mean, every single lawyer has a bias one way or the other. I mean, that's just kind of how things work. I mean, if I was a lawyer, I would definitely be a defense attorney, and I would have some biases towards the defense. Like that's just how naturally I am or whatnot. But it was super, super, super fun to watch. Even though my wife was like, I kind of don't really know what's going on. And then we talked about I just sat down. We were watching Pirates of the Caribbean last night. Like not in celebration or anything like that. Like we went over to my mother-in-law's and it just happened to be on. And I was just like, oh, goodness. And I literally thought it would have been so great. And I know there are already memes about this because I am not the smartest man in the world at all, nor am I creative in that bit at all either. But it would have been great if Johnny Depp as the jury was like as the case was being was kind of being not dismissed in the legal term dismissed, but people were leaving and whatnot, and Johnny Depp stood up to the microphone and said, "And remember, this was the time that you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow." I'm like, that would have been gold. Would have been
almost
gold.
defamed Johnny Depp. Yeah.
But and of course, because that's how he ended almost every Pirates of the Caribbean movie or so whatnot. So it was good. It was very good. Again, I'm happy for Johnny. I mean, $8.3 million. That's a lot of money. Like, don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money, but it's compared to the money that he's lost over everything that has happened to him over these past, I mean, was it 6 years now?
Yeah, and I mean, who knows
if
he'll see it? I mean, so he doesn't have to collect it all. He doesn't have to say that we want it all. And even if he does, I don't know if that is going to be a possibility. I mean, for collections, garnish wages, you put a lien on property, but that is a whole other issue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, we were talking about CNN Plus a few weeks ago, and we were talking about this again, this rebirth of media, and I get so excited. I talk about this a lot, and it's probably annoying, but I get really excited when I get to watch this change in the way that people consume and share information. I think we used to think that the media had to be sensational because that was the only way to hook people.
Right.
But the reason that I think we thought that was because if you were going to watch the news, you were going to watch the news. You were going to sit down, you were going to turn on the TV, and you were going to watch it.
Exactly.
And you had other things to do. So you wanted the quick hits and you wanted the most exciting stuff. Now, you got a phone, you can listen to something, you can stream it, you can do whatever in the background. I can't, because I can only focus on one thing at a time, but I mean, other people can have the trial going.
Right.
And now people don't trust the sensationalism as much anymore. And they also recognize that if you have an engaging enough host, you can make boring stuff like arguing about a jury instruction on agency theory really interesting. How can you make it interesting? By teaching your viewers, by respecting them, by saying, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. Here's what they're talking. And if you understand something, you get excited about it. That's what I have learned through my lifetime of not understanding things and then trying to understand them and getting really excited about them and not understanding why nobody else cares about monetary policy because it's so interesting.
Right.
But when you understand it, then you get excited about it. And so that this could be a lesson about how to really market information in a new way that doesn't distort things, that doesn't over sensationalize things. And it also just takes viewers seriously. This doesn't have to be trial. This doesn't have to be the Depp trial. This can be for anything. I truly believe that.
On to I would say a more serious sad topic. In case you guys are not aware, there have been I would say a plethora of shootings that have involved multiple people over the past 2 to 3 weeks. There was the one in Buffalo. There was the one in Uvalde at the so sick at the elementary school. And that hits home. It really does hit home because I have a wife who teaches out at elementary school. Like, that really does hit home. And I know exactly where Uvalde, Texas is. I'm in Texas. Like, I visited this place numerous occasions. One of my good friends who I met in college is from that area, went to that elementary school. So a lot of the stuff really does hit home. And then I know there were some recent ones, one in Tulsa. Yes, Tulsa. There was one that almost happened at a graduation party in North Carolina. There was one that happened in Philadelphia a couple of days ago, or yesterday or a few days ago. There's one that happened in Chattanooga. So like it is a sad, serious topic. Like it is something that that regardless of what people think, is something that should be addressed one way or another. Now, that being said, Again, and I hate the whole thoughts and prayers concept or whatnot, but that is definitely something that I constantly do. I'm definitely praying for these people and praying for comfort and peace, because I cannot imagine going through any of that. Because it's I mean, it's devastating. It's crazy to think that a lunatic, somebody who is crazy, somebody who does not have the same, who does not believe in the same intrinsic value of life that most Americans do, will go forward and do some heinous act like that. Like that is is sickening. And there are a lot of reasons for it. As far as why people do what they do, there is evil in this world, and whatever we try to do, there is no getting rid of evil. There is no changing the hearts of men. Like that's the world we live in, as sick and as sad as it is. Like that is. But here is what happens after every single one of these travesties. Every single one. You have your lovely politicians, the ones who have been voted in, now decide to step upon these lives and use these use these instances in which somebody decided to do something crazy and start to create criminals out of every single person that owns some sort of firearm in the world. Not the world, the U.S. Okay, and before I dive into this, because I feel like I'm about to go on a rant. Before I dive into this, I want to say something to a lot of people out there who do not live in the United States. If you, for some reason, decide to make some stupid comment as, well, I don't understand what's up with Americans and their guns because we don't have this situation here, and I live in this country. I'm just going to tell you, how about you just shut up before you put your foot in your mouth? Because I don't compare the U.S. to anybody else. You want to know why? Because I don't live there. I don't know what their structure is like. I don't know what their culture is like. Things of that nature. So if you over there living in Canada, because I got friends that live in Canada, you over there living in UK and saying we don't have these issues, and we've decided to go about life this way, then you may just want to hush your mouth, because every country deals with things differently, very much so. You don't have the same population that we do. You don't have the same accessibility to certain things that we do. Nobody says anything when people go on stabbing sprees. Okay, so I'll tell people to pause for that. But you have people who are who are starting to impose specific acts or laws or whatever you want to call it, that now restrict people's right to defend themselves. I use those terms specifically. I do not use the term right to own a gun. It is the right to self-preservation, the right to personal property, the right to defend yourself, and ownership of your things. Okay, so that is you. All right. So you have these lovely little Democrats and Republicans. Okay, I spare. I promise you, I don't spare anybody in this, because Republicans have said the same thing. I saw a TikTok talking about how your Republican President Donald Trump talked about red flag laws and stuff like that. And I was like, he ain't my president, so you better kick rocks with that too. Talked about that. So the Democrats they are leading this, of course, but they are starting to they want to enact new laws as far as raising the age to own a rifle. Let me say a rifle from 18 to 21, because the current age to legally own a handgun is 21. The age to own a rifle is 18.
What's the age to vote?
18.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah. Age to drink, 21. Age to smoke, 21.
What's the age to join the military?
18.
Just checking.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Yeah. And so they're doing all kinds of things. Okay. And this is nothing new. They've been trying to do things even prior to these mass shootings. It's things that the ATF is doing and so forth. So all of these things that are happening. But Amanda, I got a question for you.
Yeah,
Do
okay.
you know how many gun laws are currently on the books on a federal level?
How many gun laws are on the books and on a federal level?
On a federal level, yes.
Off the top of my head, I don't. I either want to say it's zero or a heck of a lot. As on the state level, there are tons.
Yeah, there's a lot on the federal level and a lot on the
Okay.
state level.
Okay.
Federal level, 20,000 laws.
Okay.
20,000. Now that's a lot. As somebody who's wearing a hoodie that says all gun control is racist, and I'm a firm believer in that, 100%. I'm hugely a firm believer in that, because of how it's enacted and where it stems from, and how it gets and how people push forth gun control today. It is 100%. It 100% affects people, and I hate using this term, but people of color. It affects minorities more so than it does anybody else in the United States. It just does. That's a fact. But there are 20,000 plus laws on a federal level against firearms. Now, if anybody wants to sit here and tell me that one more law would have changed any outcome of what has happened, please let me know. I am dying to hear. Please let me know what law that you would have done. What law would you have put in place that would have changed anything? Because you can't say it's background checks, because I mean, well, one, you can't say it's anything because killing people is against the law. It is. Anything that you decide to do that puts forth another restriction to keep, and I hate using this because people will say this is a right talking point and you sound like a Republican, things of that nature. Something that you would put into place to restrict somebody's ability to own a firearm does no good at all. It does not. It only keeps the people, the good guys with guns, who stop every single shooting with a gun of some sort. Good guys with guns stop more shootings than bad guys. Stop a whole lot of shootings. Okay. That being said, all that it does, it keeps me, somebody who will never, ever pick up a firearm and use it on somebody unless they are threatening my life or the life of my loved ones. And you're now turning me into a criminal. They're sitting here talking about banning all types of an AR style platform. Okay. Which in my mind is like, I don't see why you would want to do that, because you're taking, if one, that is an act of aggression, it's an act of violence. And I will explain that here in a minute. Okay.
Please do.
If
but do you go yeah, and then come back and explain.
So I'll touch on that. So that's an act of violence, an act of aggression. You are now putting me at a disadvantage, if I so choose, to hand over whatever firearm you want me to, at a disadvantage when somebody breaks into my home and tries to threaten my life. I don't know about anybody else in this world, but I will say this. If I am going to use some sort of force to stop a threat, I want the most efficient and the one that is going to do the least amount of damage to everybody surrounding me. So that is, I hate to break it to you, it's not a bat. It's not throwing knives that are not accurate, that have the ability to hit somebody else or whatnot. It is a firearm that is going to put a stop to said threat that is coming towards me, putting them down, and then we move on. That is the most efficient. That's the most effective. That is in my opinion, and it's going to take a lot to sway my opinion to believe it's to something else. But in my opinion, it is the most effective, and there should be no reason why you would make a hindrance for somebody who wants to preserve life, or for anything. Who cares what they want it for? I don't care what you want your firearm for, as long as you're not using it on other people. Okay, but for you to make some sort of statement of, oh, well, we need to get all the firearms away from everybody, or we need to do this, or need to do that. What additional law, which will make it 20,001 on the federal level would have prevented any of these. We already have background checks on a federal level. You already have to be 18. Okay. Not every single state you can, because it's on state levels, you can't purchase specific firearms at every single state level. Okay. The high capacity magazines, things of that nature. You're not allowed to carry a firearm in a school. Like all of there are so many different laws on the books. I do not understand why we think that one more is going to make a difference. They call it common sense gun reform. I don't know about you, but I'm trying to figure out what else you're trying to do, because none of it makes any sense to me. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and that's all. And that's the critique that I've heard most often from people is, the proposals that are coming down would not arrest the majority of gun violence that we see. Most gun violence is committed with handguns.
Yes.
Most gun violence is fortunately not mass shootings.
Correct.
But it's committed by different people. It's committed by different perpetrators.
Mm-hmm.
When we hear about mass shootings, we hear that people had these guns legally. When we hear about gun violence in Chicago, I think we're at maybe 1,000 people now, 900 something people this year who have died of gun violence in Chicago. We hear a lot of times the guns that weren't purchased legally, and so you've got a situation in Chicago a lot of times where only criminals do have guns. But one thing that stands out to me is something that I've heard from a lot of people, including our President Joe Biden, is why, Maurice, why does anyone need an AR-15?
The Maurice Jones answer to that is it's none of your effing business. It is none of your business why I need it. But if you want the husband, the future father type thing, that is the most effective tool that I can use to protect against my family if some threat imposes on them. It is. There's no doubt about it. I'm not sending any RPGs. Handguns are not as effective as an AR. They're not as easy to control. Most people are more accurate with rifles from a long distance than they are with handguns. Like, let's be real. That is the most effective tool that I can use to protect myself, my family, my loved ones, in any sort of threat and under imminent danger. Sorry.
No, I mean, I wanted to hear that answer because that's what I keep on hearing is why should Americans own AR-15s? Why should Americans be able to own weapons of war? Is an AR-15 a weapon of war?
Now, you will. I feel like I'm about to make a whole lot of Republicans mad, but I deem any sort of firearm is a weapon of war because it can be used. Like the intent of a firearm is to stop a threat. Like now, if you're going to ask, hey, have AR-15s been used in war? The answer is no. Now you can say an AR style, yes. M4, that's an AR style. Like, I mean, there's a few differences or whatnot, but they're not vast as far as how they operate and how they run.
Okay. Yeah. So then again, that is what we keep on hearing is, you ban the AR-15s, you get rid of the problem. Unfortunately, you don't.
Right.
Yeah, even if we could take away all the AR-15s in America, which is not likely. We also, I mean, we have a supply of guns directly adjacent to us that criminals can obtain. This is different from a lot of places in Europe. This is different from a lot of places around the world. There's always going to be the threat of resupplying people who are very ill. There's always going to be the threat of illegally resupplying people with dangerous weapons.
Right.
So that was one thing that I wanted to ask is, why does anyone need an AR-15?
It's none of your effing business, but
right. Well, and I have to say, and this isn't my response necessarily, but I do find the idea that you don't need something is not usually going to work with an American.
No.
I don't know. Why do you need that is not going to cause most Americans to be like, you know what, you're right, maybe I shouldn't. Like
why do you need a brand new car?
Why do nobody needs,
right.
as Bernie Sanders would say, nobody needs 18 brands of deodorant at the store.
Right.
You don't need that.
Exactly.
And so why do you need is not really, it's rhetoric, but it's not worked for anything else.
Right.
I don't feel like it's the strongest argument someone needs or doesn't need an AR-15.
Not at all. And I mentioned the People's Republic of Texas that is having a gubernatorial election coming up here in November. We have the idiot that is
Robert O'Rourke.
Yes, Robert Francis. Some people call him Beto O'Rourke. Some people call him Beta O'Rourke. Some people call him Robert Francis. All of that, but he is running for our governor. So he tried to run for a Texas senator. For a senator, lost to Ted Cruz by, I think it was like 56 to 44 or so. Then ran for president and failed miserably. And he had the statement of his thing of, hell yes, we're coming for your AR-15s, your AK-47s. Okay, which ironically enough, he said in the state of Texas, he at a debate in the state of Texas. Okay, and then so he says that he makes that statement in 2019 or so, 2018 makes that statement, and then turns around, and when he's running for governor, he kind of backtracks and says, you know what? No, I don't want to take anybody's firearms away if you already have them, if you this, that, and the third or whatnot. He said that back in February. Of course, because as he's running for the governor of Texas, like Democrat or Republican, Texans, we love firearms. Like, I mean, whether you're voting blue or you're voting red or you're voting gold or you're not voting at all, there are firearms and everybody fires them. Like, let's be real. Everybody shoots them. And if you're going to sit here and tell people that yes, we're coming for your firearms, then they're going to be like, probably shouldn't vote for you. So he backtracks. But then, oh my gosh, then in a small, like little, I guess you could say he was like in a little city hall type thing, said there's no need for anybody to own a weapon of war, an AR-15. And then he says, yes, and if you currently own one, I don't believe that you should own it, and we're going to come for them. Now, here is why I say this is an act of violence. Okay, this is an act of aggression, an act of violence.
Okay, yeah.
Somebody comes into your house and takes something from you. Okay, in my eyes, that's an act of aggression. That is, you are coming against something that is not yours, that is mine, and I have every right under the sun to own it. Okay, private property rights, however you want to deem it. Okay, even if you want to go to the beloved Second Amendment says that I can have it, then okay. If you want to go to, Supreme Court, with, oh my gosh, I forgot the name of the 2 or the 3 Supreme Court decisions that ruled that, hey, yes, an AR style platform is a commonly held right of firearm that is something that is protected. So, but you do all of that. If you say, hey, you know what? You are no longer allowed to own this. What are you going to do? You're going to send the state goons, whether that be your local police department, your sheriff, whatever, you're going to send them to my house to try and take them from me. If I say no, what happens? Mm-hmm. I'm dead. That's what happens. And for the people who think that that's not the case, that very much is. This has already happened. It happened in Maryland some years ago. There was a guy. This is why I cannot stand red flag laws, because you're literally aggressing upon somebody. This guy, a family member of somebody that said, hey, he's got firearms. We don't think he should own them. Blah, 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 blah. Long story short, these people came to his house and they killed him. Now, There, some stuff ensued. You could be like, well, he should have just handed over the firearms. Well, why does he need to hand over his property? Like, why do you need to hand over something that you need that has been deemed of nobody should take from you? Like, that's like, hey, hand over the keys to your house. Well, why? Well, because we said so, because we feel like you're not going to take care of the house properly. But hold up, what? Like, no, hand over the keys to your house or we're going to kill you. Like, that's what happens. That is literally what happens in every single one of these scenarios. And what makes it even worse is you're dealing with firearms. So, of course, the people coming to your house are even much more on high alert. So they're much more, they're definitely quicker on the trigger. 100%. Daniel Shaver, 100%. The guy, they said a firearm was involved. The guy's pulling up his pants. Dude shoots him dead. Like, all these things happen. Okay. So it is 100% an act of violence. And imagine, and like, just think if they try to do this countrywide, and I'm not saying that they will, but let's say that they happen to do it. What happens when all the owners say no? Like, just think of like what happens. Then you could say, oh, well, it is a weapon of war, because that's what's going to happen. You're either we're going to peacefully say, no, okay, if you want to own your ARs and do stuff, you live on this side of the country. And if you don't, you live on this side of the country, and then you move on. Or they say, okay, you say no, we're coming after you. And then we delve into this thing that is going to be very graphic. And I don't wish that on anybody or anything, but these are the things that if you take these things to its logical conclusion, this is where you end up. Like, I'd like to think past level one. Mm-hmm. Past level, like level one is very basic. Oh, mass shooting happened. Let's take the firearm away, which makes that is very level one, like easy mode. Living on, I mean, you're playing Lion King on easy mode, and all you got to do is pounce on Zazu, like that. Like, that's what you're playing. Here, we like to play things like, I don't know. I don't know what the hardest game that I've ever played was. Probably maybe like Halo or Gears of War.
Tetris.
Online. Yes, you're playing Tetris on the highest level, and it's going, and it's instead of it's like as fast as you can go. Like, and we're thinking, okay, this move right here is going to affect this. It's going to affect this. It's going to affect this. So when you know and understand that, you know that not one single law is going to change anything at all. It is not. You're an idiot if you think that it is. And I think that you are 100% an aggressor if you think that I should give up my firearms, whatever they are. Because if we take a look at it, everybody's because you'll hear people say, "Oh, it's a slippery slope because we're not coming for all guns." Canada literally just started banning parts of handguns. Like, literally, they just did. He's like, "Well, we're not coming for those." No, you are. You are. You 100% are. So here is what you do. You think to yourself, you go, well, Maurice, there are a lot of situations in which mass shootings are a problem. Okay. And I would say that they are. You should not fear sending your kid to school, like, and wondering, are they gonna come home safe? You should not fear going to the grocery store. You should not fear going to the hospital. You should not fear going into these things. Now, the non-solver of me could say, that's life. We move on. Like, you learn to look over your shoulder, which I do. But part of me would say, what's an actual solution to this? Maybe. And me being a teacher, me being in education, I feel like there are some things that I could do to make sure. One, and I'll be well, arm teachers. Now, again, I'm not opposed to that at all. I'm 100% not opposed to that. If you trust these people to teach your students, then why do you not trust them with a firearm around them? Like, let's be real. If you trust them on one level of not to indoctrinate my kid and to just teach them what the basics is, then you should be able to trust them with a firearm. And I hear comments, well, I wouldn't trust a teacher with a firearm around my kid. Okay, so why is that kid going to that school? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway.
Well, the trained firearm presumably would be trained in education.
Yes, exactly. And like, I mean, you're not just giving this to all teachers willy-nilly. Like that's kind of like, you know. But and that's not my first go-to. That's not at all my first go-to.
Mhm.
My first go-to is this. Is your school following the right procedures? Are they? Is every door locked to where the only way that you can get access to it is somebody opens it from the inside? If that is not the case, that should be your first step as an admin. Every single situation, there should not be any doors propped open at all. Whenever. I hate to, I like, that's just, well, we shouldn't live like that. You're right, we shouldn't, but we do. There should not be a single door propped open. Like, every single door should be locked. We go through drills. I'm a teacher. I know it's my first year, but we literally went through an active shooter drill this year. Okay. And the admin walked around and double checked and made sure, okay, this. There's a reason why when in a school, if they pull a fire alarm, you don't leave the class until your principal, somebody from admin, gets over the intercom and says, hey, this is an actual fire. That is what happens. Like, so there are procedures in place to protect against these things. If like, so no doors are propped open at all. There can't be a door propped open. Every door needs to be locked. The only way that you can get in is if somebody allows you in through that. Okay. So then I know people hate to say it. How about you get some metal detectors at the schools? Like, I get it. Well, I don't want my kid going to prison. Okay, you talked about safety and security. That's what you're comfortable with. If every single kid that comes to the school has to walk through a metal detector and has to walk through some sort of, hey, let me check your stuff to make sure that we're on high alert, then maybe that should be the case. Now, I'm not saying this is for everybody and for every single school. There are a lot of schools that already have this. The schools that have this, you probably don't have a whole lot of mass shootings.
I went to a high school
out there.
Part of the time that
these are all things.
Yeah. No, I was just saying I went to a high school that
these are things that you can implement. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. We're good.
Yeah. So there are these are two things that you can implement today. Literally today. You could say, hey, teachers, front office, make sure that you are following procedures. Nobody comes into school unless you know them. At our school, we literally have an intercom system. Everybody has to go in through one door, and you are not allowed in until somebody pushes a button to open the door to let you in. Like, my badge won't even do that. Like, literally, that's what I'm saying. So like there are precautions in place that people can do. And so these are things that people can already start setting up now. Then, I mean, if you want to get down to the, oh, well, how about you arm teachers? Like, teachers are willing to take bullets for their children. I imagine that they would be willing to train and use a firearm on said person who was aggressing against them as well. Like, I think if I'm willing to lay down my life for a child and lay on top of them in order to shield them from said harm, then I'm able to protect them in that sense. Like, there are so many things that can be done. I think a lot of people are always going after said machine and not going after the actual people and ways to prevent these people from actually doing things. And it muddies the water. They try to deflect, they try to defer, and they go on the backs of everybody else, as opposed to truly understanding what is the issue and how can we address it. One more law on top of the 20 plus thousands that we already have is not going to help. Sorry about my little rant.
No, it was perfect. I wanted you to rant. I wanted you to get a chance to talk because you know way more about this than I do. You're probably more invested in certain solutions than I do, and you have certain solutions. Although I heard myself saying words that I never thought would come out of my mouth just because it's so memeable. I was talking with my parents the other day, and we were talking about various gun measures and all the rest. And I heard myself say, the problem is, it says, shall not be infringed. And then I blacked out and I woke up just in a puddle of my own sweat. So yeah.
It is, and even when people talk about that, like, but it also says a well-regulated militia. And it's just like, Yeah, but what is the militia? Back then, what was the militia? It was regular people. Literally, anybody who was capable to pick up a firearm was part of the militia. Like, it wasn't just some specific sect of the government. It was anybody who can pick up a firearm.
Yeah. And it also doesn't say just for purposes of having a well-regulated militia. If you are in the military, you should own a fire. I mean, again, we can parse the Constitution. It's been parsed. I was actually kind of laughing at myself for the fact that I in fact did it. I became, Chad Libertarian, 57. But yeah, at any rate, no, I enjoyed hearing your actual common sense solutions. That is common sense reform.
It is. And I almost got really boring and started to go into, like, I was preparing like ballistics and saying like, oh, they're talking about this type of caliber and this type of caliber because Joe Biden said something about 9mm and how that can, it's designed to, like, what did he say? Like, dissolve a lung. And then Whoopi Goldberg said something about how, an AR style platform can turn somebody to dust and things of that nature. And I was just like, well, if that's the case, I'm missing out. Somebody needs to let me know what kind of caliber I'm missing on so I can turn somebody
Wizard
to
of Oz
dust.
going on here. I didn't know that was a thing. Yeah,
exactly.
No.
But I was like,
more like Star
calibers,
Wars, I guess. Yeah,
or Harry Potter, all that stuff. So, but I was like, I'll leave that maybe for a different time, maybe for a little mini Maurice sode or whatnot. I can go into the different calibers and why it's important to have different types of firearms and things of that nature. So
I think you should. And you should also do either your personal finance mini episodes, and I don't know, I'll break down the Depp verdict or something. I don't know. I'll find something for myself to do.
Right, for sure. But I think that is it. I know we have run into some technical difficulties, and hopefully, prayerfully, Justin is going to be able to piece all of this together thanks to the lovely internet that Mr. Jones has at his house. But thank you all for listening so much. Thank you for joining us on another episode. If you've made it this far, you probably rock with us just a little bit. We appreciate you. Please feel free to like, share, like this video on the YouTubes. Please share this show with a friend, a loved one, somebody who you think is for gun control, which is very racist. Somebody who is definitely anti-gun control, which is yours truly. And I firmly believe that all gun laws are infringements, every single last one of them. Please share the show. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars if you think we're worth it, because I know we are. We're worth every bit of those 5 stars. Follow us on Spotify. Follow us on all the social medias. That is at Civil Discord Pod on Twitter, at Ajax the Griff on Twitter, at Civil Discord Podcast on Instagram, and Call Me Maurice on Instagram as well too. Again, please like, comment, subscribe to all of that on our YouTube page. Follow us there as well. Do all of that, and I assure you we will be back with another episode of Civil Discord. Until then, y'all be easy
and stay fierce.